Hello everyone, Dave Landry here from DaveLandry.com. This is Trading Simplified. So what do we talk about? Well, I've kind of been beating a dead horse on market timing and trends and all that stuff, so I'm going to take a break from that. I would urge you to go back in and watch it. I know I'm going to keep beating a dead horse until everybody understands what I'm trying to say and the questions die off, but please go back in and watch recent shows about market timing and some of the older shows too, trends, etc. I want to focus this week on the methodology in action, plus a few other things, what I actually do to make money in the market, such as the methodology in action, which most of that comes straight from my trading service, and I'll explain that in 1 second or a few minutes. I want to explain and talk a little bit about profit centers with the focus this week on Russian dolls. I want to introduce you to the concept of profit centers, what I'm talking about there, and what I occasionally do, and a lot of things that I could be doing much better. And that's the thing about this business, you could always do much better. And I'll explain that in just 1 second. Crypto's beginning to wake up. You haven't heard me talk about crypto much lately, but now it's beginning to work once again. I do have a few shorts still on there, but I have been buying some crypto as of late. And I want to show you a simple little system that you could use in crypto. I'm not sure that I would do it mechanically, but it is something that will help to keep you on the right side of the market. And I think it's pretty cool, if I say so myself. Housekeeping, I do take requests. If you want me to cover something, shoot me an email. You can reach me at davelandry.com/contact. It makes my job a lot easier knowing what I'm covering ahead of time. If you want the slides from this presentation, all the other ones with all the setups and mystery charts and everything else I talk about, go to davelandry.com/StockCharts. I'll also give you a free market timing course, limited access to the members area, and a bunch of other goodies, including all of my books. If you do want to ask questions live, I do a weekly webinar every week. You can go to davelandry.com/webinar to register. Register even if the date is old, and you will have access to the latest show. Let's talk about the mystery charts and the methodology in action. So we got a new mystery chart this week. This is an IPO. Nice little uptrend, and it's since pulled back. The entry is here, the stop is here, and the initial profit target is up here. In this case, we're looking for a 4-point gain and 4-point risk. And I'll show you this one next week, whether it triggers or not. Hopefully not warts and all. All right, this week we have a mystery chart reveal. This is actually a first mystery chart. CENX, and that's the parameters you can see in the trading service: 2550, 2050 protective stop, and initial profit target of 3050. Risk total of 5 points. Remember, we adjust the risk based on the volatility of the underlying instrument. Some stocks it might only be 1 point, other stocks it might be 5 or even 10 or more. So this stock was in a really, really nice uptrend. It was also accelerating higher, like a lot of the stocks we talked about lately. And notice that it pulled back fairly deeply from that pullback. It has a tiny bit of a tiny little gap here. And I'm not too concerned about that because it is a commodity-related stock, aluminum, as you can see. Entry was here, stop was here, and initial profit target up here, as I discussed last week. By the way, you can look at all of these mystery charts. I think every one so far has come straight from my trading service. You can go to davelandry.com/archives, and I'll make sure those are updated by the time you get there so you can see the latest mystery charts. Anyway, that's straight from my trading service. I do archive those off, and you can look at those things, and as I said a second ago, see the good, the bad, and sometimes the ugly. See everything, warts and all. And obviously, you know, there's no hindsight involved because you'll see the date and you'll see what setups I was recommending for that date. So if you can't sleep at night or if you want to learn more about trading, I would recommend you do that. It's a really good exercise walking through everything. And not everything works, obviously. If it did, you'd never see my fat arse again. But you get to see how it works and how sometimes it doesn't, and why we use stops because sometimes it doesn't. And my ultimate goal is to stick with the trend a long, long time, as long as it moves in our favor. And I think we have one in the portfolio has been in there about a year and a half, hopefully. I know you should never use the word hope, but hopefully it'll be in there for the next 5 years. All right, here's our second mystery chart, BPT, which is obviously an energy stock. And the parameters are buy at 12, stop at 850, IPT at 1550. This is a very volatile stock. I don't have HV on this particular screen, but the HV is really, really high, especially for an energy stock. By the way, HV, you can find that in the ACP plugin. It's called Landry volatility, but it's actually historical volatility. I didn't create that indicator. It's part of my plugin, so they called it that. But like the other stock, you can see nice accelerating uptrend, one of my favorite patterns. Also, persistent uptrend, like I discussed last week. You can draw a line through nearly every bar, and the ones that it doesn't intersect, the price, such as this one right here, is actually above. Just imagine a bar going through these lines. So that means that it's very strong. It's so strong it's actually pulling away from that mean, so to speak. And by the way, linear regression is a way to mathematically see what I'm talking about, but I just like to draw a line through the bars for persistency. If you have time, go in and look at the shows we've done on persistent pullbacks. By we, I guess I mean me, myself, and I. There's the line I was looking for. You can see, like I just said, draw a line through as many bars as possible, and we could actually pull this down a little bit, and you'd have a couple of more of these that would be to the upside, and that's known as persistency, one of my favorite patterns when I look at the market, especially when combined with a little bit of acceleration. Now, the stock pulled back fairly deeply, and then we had an entry here, a stop down here, initial profit target up here. Now, let's take a look at what happened. The stock continued to implode. It didn't really fit the methodology anymore since it pulled back so deeply, but I did still think, based on the magnitude of the trend, that it had potential to possibly bounce from those levels, kind of like a rubber band being stretched to the downside, especially after a big uptrend like that. And so I recommended my clients possibly go in and take some day trades on this. Just look for an intraday rally and look to get in. And that's what I call a Russian doll. And that'll make a little sense, or a little more sense in a few minutes. Essentially, I'll just give you kind of a heads up. Russian doll is when you have a daily pattern and you're looking to trade an intraday pattern off of that. It's not necessarily the same pattern on the intraday basis, but it might be like a breakout from, let's say, a pullback on a daily. You might be looking at a 15-minute breakout or some other type of pattern, such as like an opening gap reversal early in the morning. But anyway, we had 3 days of pretty much straight up. And if we zoom in on that, we'll take a look at it. Now, before we do that, let's talk a little bit about profit centers. I borrowed the term profit center from Linda Raschke. She had a gentleman in her office that was doing certain types of trading, and he didn't really do a whole lot of research on it. He just liked doing what he was doing, and he would go in there and sometimes win a lot and sometimes lose a lot. And Linda told him, hey, look, why don't you tell me exactly what you're doing? Let's model it out and see if it could be a profit center, meaning that's something we might want to throw a little money at to make a little money on the side. So my core methodology, and that's why I call it the core trading service, is the swing to intermediate term and sometimes even longer. For instance, ARLP, we got in it at $4.89, and knock on wood, so far so good. It's in the mid-teens right now. So that's the ultimate goal, and that's where the real money is. But sometimes in the meantime, you can make a little bit of money. And one of my favorite profit centers is a Russian doll, as I alluded to a minute ago. And that's just looking for a pattern inside a pattern, a fractal, if you will. Now, it doesn't have to be the same pattern. So in the case of, let's say you've got a really nice looking pullback, that's something that you would take for a daily setup, and hopefully it turns into a swing trade and then a longer term trade. In other words, the core methodology. But let's say you've got 10 setups and you've picked 1 or 2 that you want to go after the next day, such as the mystery charts. And then you have these other ones that look really good, but you can't trade everything. You might want to go in and take an intraday trade on that. I call it an intraday trade because my goal with an intraday trade is to get in as soon as possible and ride it all day long, not go in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out, like the rat going for cocaine. Now, again, I tell my clients, keep an eye on this one, not so much for a position trade, but maybe for some intraday trading. And notice that over a period of 3 days, and remember, this is a reversion to the mean move out of that pullback, okay? This is a pattern within the pattern on an intraday basis. But here are 3 daily bars. Notice that it opened near the low, or it didn't go much lower than it opened, I should say. It closed near the high. This is what I call a holy grail day, especially if it does it on an expansion of range, meaning that the stock, for the most part, trended all day long, and you can make a lot of money when they do this. Now, I spend a lot of time and effort working on trying to figure out when they're going to occur, and probably one of the best things you could do is just trade them for like a Russian doll type of trade, looking for these intraday trends off of a bigger picture pattern. And here's another case where it actually opens a little bit lower, but notice that it finds its low fairly quickly, has a decent rally, and closes much better than the open and not too far from the high of the day. And then here we have a gap open. Notice that the low was barely below the gap and then rallied nicely for most of the day. Now, I wish it always worked this great. I can tell you right now, it doesn't always work this great, but as you can see, it really pays off nicely when it does. And lately, energies have really been rallying. They had a bit of a pullback, and then they all started rallying out of a pullback. So you can go in on an intraday basis, and you have position trades too, obviously working. But if you see these ancillary trades, these profit sitters, so to speak, you can go in and make a little money off of them. Now, I'm kind of beating myself up because I was so busy, maybe you could argue, chasing rabbits, looking at too many other markets, and not paying attention to my own, what I call a Landry list. A Landry list is just a short list of stocks I'm looking at, both on the sell side to sell short and on the long side to go long. And lately, obviously, we've seen mostly energy-related stocks on the long side, and also metals and mining, such as the aforementioned aluminum stock. But anyway, instead of using my own stuff and doing what I tell my clients to do, I forgot to write that down. And there's been quite a few lately. So today is the 22nd. I would encourage you to go back in and look at those archives of the last week or so. And it's pretty darn amazing, if I say so myself, some of the stocks that really took off out of the list. And we did end up in the CENX and another one called RES. And there, well, RES is not doing so hot, but CENX is working out so far so good. But I'm kind of kicking myself in the butt because I didn't catch these other ones. I did catch this last day in BPT. As you can see, in this particular account, a little smaller account, only did a couple hundred shares. I did this across multiple accounts, so it did add up a little bit. In this particular case, I was just looking for 50 cents for additional profit target. You see I took 100 shares off when it was up a half a point, and then rode the trend out, but only made 4 cents because I got knocked out with a trailing stop. So that's $4 plus $50 is obviously $54. Woohoo! Well, you know, here's the thing. If you make $100 a day on some sort of ancillary trade like this, now obviously some days you will lose money, but let's say you go in and see a trade like this and only do a couple hundred shares, and you make, let's say you make $100 on a trade. Well, that's about $25,000 extra a year. Now, I know it's kind of fuzzy math because you will have losses and all. And I guess on the flip side, you also need to tell yourself, okay, yeah, I only lost $100. Who cares? Well, if you consistently lose $100 a day, that's $25,000 a year. And obviously, $400 a day loss would be a $100,000 loss. And it begins to add up when it gets that big. But in this particular case, we weren't risking a whole lot, okay? And we made a little bit on a trade better than the poke in the eye. And again, kind of kicking myself in the butt for missing these 2 prior days in this stock and some other stocks. And again, I was busy chasing rainbows, I guess, and some other things and not paying attention to my own stuff. And, you know, you're probably like, why is this guy confessing? Well, so I don't want to have to confess again. I just need to remember to pay attention to my own stuff. And that's where the Facebook group could come in. You do have to be a member, a gold member at least, of my website to access that. The group is free, but to keep the riffraff out, I'm kind of half kidding, but you have to be a gold member. And that's where it helps a lot, because I'll see a lot of my members in there talking about some of my stocks and on. It reminds me to pay attention to my own stuff sometimes. All right, let's talk a little bit about crypto, and I want to show you a little system here. I don't want to jump into live charts and see if we could find some setups based on this system, and I'll show you some of the crypto pairs that I am currently long and or short. So here's a little system I wrote oh, how many years ago? Well, this was published in 1996. So I probably developed it in 94, 95. And it was published in Stocks and Commodities magazine. And I found this graphic on the internet. And if you Google 220 EMA Breakout System, you could also find it. But if we zoom in, all we're looking for is 2 bars of Landry light above the 20 EMA. Now, lately, I've been using the 30 EMA, and I find it works really good in crypto, and it also works pretty darn good in stocks, too. And if you go in and watch some recent presentations, I've talked a lot about the 30 EMA. I know you probably want to party with me. So 1, 2, that's your setup. It's easy as pie, you know, 2 days of Landry light, and that's it. And then you look to get it above that high. Now, this original system that I published was designed around the Japanese yen versus US dollar Forex type of currency trading system. So I said 10 ticks. Now, you might want to give it a little bit more wiggle room depending on what you're trading. And that'll help you eliminate some of the whipsaw. Of course, the downside with a trading system, if you've been trading for more than a few days or trying to trade a system, is sometimes when you try to eliminate the whipsaw, you end up buying the high tick, and that can be a little frustrating, but it happens. Spell the silent SH. For the short side, you want 2 bars of Landry light, meaning that you have 2 highs below the EMA. Now, this system was designed with a 20-day EMA, and I like the 20-day EMA because it's roughly 1 month's worth of trading, okay, 20 trading days. But I also like the 30, as I said, quite a bit, and that's what we're going to look at today. So 1 bar of Landry light, 2 bar of Landry light, and that'll make a lot of sense when we look at the ACP module. So again, 10 ticks below the low if you were trading something Forex, and I actually would give it a little bit more room than that now just to avoid a little bit of the whipsaw. All right, so let's check that out. But before we do that, I'd encourage you, don't rush out and trade this right away. Look at it, get a feel for it, play devil's advocate, find out when it works, find out when it doesn't work. You're going to find that, and by the way, I'm a discretionary trader. I don't follow a specific mechanical system per se, although some people argue that some of the things I do are somewhat mechanical, but I do occasionally dust off one of my old mechanical systems and use it to help me find the right side of the market. So use it to help you gauge developing trends. And by the way, if a market is inefficient, meaning that it can have fantastic trends, then something like a simple little system like this, simple little trend following system that is, can work really well. Now, trend following systems in general, I'm not just beating up my stuff, but trend following systems in general like this, they can have abysmal results. You get chopped up, and then all of a sudden you knock it out of the park. And occasionally when you knock it out of the park is where the real money is and makes it all worthwhile. And if you go in and look at my core trading service, you'll see we'll get knocked out for about a 10% loss, 10% loss, 10% loss. And then all of a sudden we'll have a 200% gain or a 500% gain. Doesn't happen that often, but it happens often enough to make it all worthwhile. So make sure you understand the nuances of a trend following system. Now, to my surprise, the Landry light in requiring a couple days of that, and also requiring a trigger, and maybe a slightly more liberal trigger, as I discussed a few minutes ago, meaning that you might want to give it a little bit more wiggle room, that will keep you out quite a bit of chop, but not all chop, of course. Sometimes the market will just chop back and forth around that moving average and chew you up quite a bit. But to my surprise, it will keep you out of a lot of chop. So let's shift gears and go take a look at some live crypto, and I'll show you the system. And we'll take a look at like the S&P 500 too. So just by chance, I happen to have the spiders up, and of course I have my favorite EMA in here, the 30 EMA. So remember, the system is simply, you're looking for 2 bars of Landry light, and then you're looking to get long above those 2 bars. Now let's check that out. So I added in the Landry light indicator down here. You can see I have it set to 30 and to an EMA, and my reference is 10 bars in this particular case, because that's what I normally use to help me determine trend. So the system is simply, again, 2 lows greater than 30 EMA. Look to get long above that 2 bar high. So bar 1, bar 2. Squint your eyes down here. You can see this would be the second bar of green Landry light. So you would buy above this high plus a wiggle room. So you'd be long coming in to today. Now, I would be very cautious and careful using this system in the S&P 500. And in this case, we have the spiders up. And the reason is the S&P 500, although it does look like it trends very well longer term, it does chop around quite a bit. And a trend following system will chew you up quite a bit. For instance, back here, now maybe you wiggle room would have kept you out of trouble, but bar 1, bar 2, squint your eyes, look down here, 2 bars of upside Landry light, okay? Enter above the high, okay, bar 1, bar 2. So you've gotten long above the high, and then you might have gotten stopped out probably or likely at a loss. So on the short side, just real quick, bar 1, bar 2, okay? Again, squint your eyes, 2 bars of downside Landry light, and then enter below that 2-bar low, and you can see that the market imploded really nicely from that. But notice it did rally back up above where you got in. Now, if you traded this purely mechanical, you would have lost money on that signal. And that's the other thing I want to talk about too. Anytime you use a system, make sure you have some money management in place. So in this particular case, you could have made really nice profits and maybe stopped out a little earlier than all the way up here. But mechanically, the system itself, as you look to exit at the moving average. So again, bar 1, bar 2 on the downside, the entry would have been below this low. So the entry would have been on this day here. Nice little implosion. It doesn't always work this well, believe me. Okay, then it rallied back up, and then you would have stopped out mechanically around the moving average. Now, this signal here, again, you probably wouldn't have made a whole lot of money off of it on a mechanical basis, but with a little money management, you would have done okay. Now, let's take a look at some crypto. And you can see this 1 inch has been in a downtrend a long time. Pay attention to the Landry light, like I talked about last week, okay? And weeks prior, of course. Bar 1, bar 2, entry would be above this high. It is a breakout system. And a lot of times breakouts fail, but when they go and keep on going, that's when the real money comes into play. This one's a little thin, so let's just keep going. Here's another one, okay? Bar 1, squint your eyes. Bar 2, enter above this high, plus a little wiggle room. So I'd say somewhere around here would be an entry on that one. So the point I'm trying to make is a lot of these pairs, which have been below their 30 EMA for months and months and months, are beginning to shape up a little bit. So we could have crypto bottoming out. And let's just see if we can find another setup or two. And we'll take a look, of course, at Bitcoin and Ethereum. So technically this would be 1, 2, but it's had this really crazy wide range bar here. But if you're following a system mechanically, bar 1, bar 2 above the EMA, and your entry would be above that high on AUD. AVAX, Avalanche or Avalanche, I get them confused. Avalanche. Entry above this high because what? Bar 1, bar 2. The highest high of those 2 bars, so that could trigger soon based on that particular system. And let's just go through a few more of these, and then obviously we'll take a look at Bitcoin and Ethereum. BAT, bar 1, bar 2, entry above this high. If it comes right back in, no trade, okay? So again, don't rush out to trade this mechanically, but as you can see, it can work nicely, especially when the market begins to trend. Here's Bitcoin Cash. Bar 1, bar 2, enter above this high, plus a little wiggle room. So your entry would have been yesterday at some point on that one. Let's take a look, see if we can find Bitcoin real quick. There it is, okay? Bar 1, bar 2, notice your green down here, okay, even though this almost kissed the moving average. So let's see, bar 1, bar 2, this would have been your second bar high, plus a little wiggle room, so that would actually just be triggering today based on that system. Now remember earlier I said you can get a lot of whipsaw with a trend following system like this, especially because it's a breakout system. So you look back here, bar 1, bar 2, entry above that high, nope, came right back in. So that could have saved your buttocks there on a trade, okay? But back here, of course, bar 1, bar 2, you caught a nice little rally out. I don't know if it would have been enough to get profits or maybe trail a stop higher, but you can see it did eventually end up back below the moving average. So that would be considered a whipsaw type of filter. On the short side though, look back here, bar 1, bar 2, trigger here. Nice sell off. Again, you wouldn't follow it completely mechanically, especially once you're in the system. Once you're short, in a case like this, you probably want to use a lot of money management. But something simple like this, a really simple system, can help keep you on the right side of the market. And by the way, if you're newer to trading, maybe you do want to go in and trade something on a more mechanical type of basis just to get your reps in, and as you get better and better, begin adding more and more discretion. So again, not the be all end all. See back here, you would have had a signal and that would have stopped you out, but you know what, if you get stopped out like this, you live to fight another day. And you would not have gone back into this market until now, okay? False signal here, or a signal did complete more accurately. Here you have a completed signal, but it never did trigger. So you went months by waiting for a setup. Bar 1, bar 2 down here, and then we could also, if I make this bigger, it might be a little easier to see. So these 2 bars of Landry light down here, or you could just eyeball it, which I often do. But it is kind of cool to have this indicator down here to help to tell you where you are longer term. Bar 1, bar 2, enter above this high. Technically, the trigger here, but again, you might want to give it a little wiggle room. So right around 3,000 and change would have been the trigger on that. So let's just see how this follows through. So again, crypto looking better than it has. I know you haven't seen me talk about it in a while. I was doing a little webinar, or presentation, I should say, every Saturday morning called Coffee and Crypto. But since crypto cooled off and I was just mostly short crypto, there really wasn't a whole lot to talk about. So little simple system. Take it again with a grain of salt, but if you can find some use out of it, by all means, take the ball and run with it. Well, that's all my time this week. If you need some follow-up information, again, davelandry.com/contact. And if you want the slides from this presentation and all the other presentations combined, go to davelandry.com/StockCharts, plus all the aforementioned goodies. I want to thank everybody for watching, and may the trend be with you.
Hey guys, Dave Keller here with StockCharts.com. Thanks so much for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, and we hope you did, hit the like button right below. Also, we have so much new content every day. Consider subscribing to the channel. Just hit the subscribe button in the video or right below. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. Have a fantastic day.